Hello, my name is Hana Cooper. I'm the Digital Collection Selector at the National Library of Israel. And I'm very happy and very thankful for the opportunity to be here and share with you our initiative to preserve the Jewish internet at the National Library of Israel. In the time afforded to me, I will sketch out the goals of the library as it pertains to our collection policy and strategy, the experience that we have had so far in collecting online materials, and the challenges we're facing and are anticipating for next steps. So I would like also to preface my presentation by saying that we are still very much in the working stages of establishing a collection policy and technological process for archiving the internet and other digital-born materials in general. So if you have any comments or advice following this talk, I would be very happy and glad to hear it. So for a bit of context, the National Library of Israel, whose new building you can see just behind me, was established at the end of the 19th century in 1897, before the establishment of the State of Israel, and it was dedicated from its inception to the preservation of the cultural and intellectual history of the Jewish people in all its myriads of different forms. So naturally, the collection strategy was focused originally on acquiring printed materials, mostly books and manuscripts, although not only that. But over the next century and a bit, this mission has undergone various challenges and revisions, in tandem with the metamorphosis of the Jewish nation and the State of Israel. So all the different practical changes that happened also influenced our goals at the library, naturally. So the National Library of Israel's collection contains three general collections. You can see them behind me: the Islam and Middle East collection, the Humanities collections, and the Music collection. And aside from that, we have two core collections, which is the Judaica and the Israel collection. We collect materials to expand all five collections, naturally, but a special attention is given to the two core collections. And those two core collections are, like, in terms of digital content, are the two biggest ones. So as it pertains to the Judaica collection, we have a set policy in place for 100 years that we've been collecting for attaining what we deem Jewish materials, which is a very general and very up to debate term, but we had to put certain limits in place. So we have a hierarchy in the types of materials we actively seek out to add to our collection. So anything that deals directly with Jewish history, thought, and culture is deemed level A, and we want to collect all of it. And something that touches upon Judaism in a more kind of remote way, but isn't exactly inside of the Jewish sphere, is deemed level B. So for instance, a new book about a historical synagogue would be level A, and we want it and we need it in our collection. But for instance, a biography of a very famous Jewish scientist, which doesn't directly link to Jewish themes, is seen as level B, and we don't necessarily need it as much. We still are interested in adding it to our collection because we're a library and we're hoarders. That's what we do. But it's second priority. We can wait a bit before we acquire it. Nowadays, after going through so many changes over the last century and a half, our collection has expanded and includes, under very general categories, visual culture, audio and video recording, newspapers, personal and institutional archives. Just to name a few, I kind of had to give general themes to the collection, but it contains a whole multitude of different materials. And this collection holds hundreds and millions of different documents and items, and is obviously constantly growing. However, the collection policy that we apply to the collection of these materials is heavily dependent upon curatorial work from our dedicated selectors that are working at the library. We have just under 10 selectors working on getting us materials from specific fields of specialty of the Jewish world, and they decide alongside our head Judaica curator what comes into our custody. So when we decided that we were actually interested in working with digital-born materials and web content and adding these materials to our collection, which happened years ago, we quickly saw that there is a need to re-examine our methods of collection and see how they match up with the new challenges that we were facing. There was a collective agreement that the large segments in the online sphere fall under the collection goals of the Judaica archive. We agreed that it's important, and that there is a growing urgency in collecting the materials in real time before they disappear, obviously. But how exactly should we do that? That was kind of the question that we were keeping on to find a suitable answer to. So, from the very beginning, the incredible potential in maintaining a web archive to the preservation of various corners of the Jewish experience, of the Jewish internet, that this type of Jewish experience was never available for our collection before. So we like local community life or familial traditions or any other various aspects of the Jewish economy, like local markets and stuff like that you can find online. Those are incredibly important. They are a part of our collection strategy in general, but we have never, the web archive affords us a new opportunity to get these materials. So it was very exciting for us. But so many of the goals that we set back in the 19th century, suddenly there was a new reality that we could possibly give this collection a whole new angle. But our entry to the online sphere necessitated us to reevaluate the way we determine what is within our collection scope and what is in the right approach for acquiring it. So originally, the web archive was conceived as a kind of technological effort inside of the library, just in terms of the structure. And one of our key members is actually in the audience, back in the early days, Revital. But however, a few years ago, the project changed direction and moved to the collection department, with the expectation that the questions that need to be answered are philosophical rather than practical in nature. So at least for the current stage of the project, it is concentrated in the collection department, although it is seen as a wider library effort. So all different departments take part in what we do. So what type of materials are we actually talking about, and what do we do? So much like other web archives, we also orient our collection in a three-pronged approach. We have a frequent crawl that we have located around 70 different online Jewish newspapers from all over the globe. So we have La Tribune Juive over here. So we see what is appropriate frequency for these materials, and we collect it into our system. Aside from that, we have subject-based crawls for every once in a while, whenever there's a particular important event in the Jewish world, or just different pilots that we run. We do a dedicated harvest of the websites. So for instance, we had a little collection for Jewish wedding websites, which was a little fun theme to go into. You have like a specific Jewish wedding website called Smashing the Glass, which was nice to locate. And of course, an annual crawl. So once a year, we harvest all the websites we can locate having to do with Judaism. So the locate is like the operating verb here. Unlike the previous two crawls, the annual list requires a more expansive and automatic process in compiling the list of desired websites for archiving. We have a multi-level approach for creating this list. So as you will see, we were still trying to strike a balance between an automated and a curatorial approach to better achieve the benefit of each side of the spectrum. Basically, we're looking for the best quality and the most quantity at the same time. So we have applied different techniques in trying to update our policies for building our lists for content that is relevant, important, and a valuable addition to our collection. So I put this on this graph to kind of try and explain to you and to myself the kind of theoretical framework of what we've been trying out. So from the left corner, we have the curatorial lists. So we implemented our Judaica selectors to compile lists from their fields of expertise in the same way they collect books and journals and newspapers. We also asked them to give us websites. And although we still use these lists, and they were fantastic lists, and we encourage the selectors to keep the lists active alongside their day-to-day work, we found that the number of websites garnered in this technique was just simply insufficient. We're talking about like a few hundreds after a very dedicated probe, but it just wasn't enough. So we moved on to harvesting lists. Categorical lists, we call them. So we tried locating websites containing comprehensive lists of the types of URLs we were interested in. So, for example, the list of the Union of Reform Judaism has a huge list of all of the different websites of Reform temples around North America and the English-speaking world in general. So we could actually go and get a few hundred websites just like that, and it was great. And there are a few people who are really, really dedicated to corners of this specific world. So we've managed to find a lot of fantastic lists. However, this very quickly we kind of ran out of lists that we found. It's also, I don't know if you also encountered this, but it's kind of a sign of the old internet when there's one place that has a lot of lists of websites in it. So also we didn't know whether all these websites were still active. We tried to see to kind of sift through them and do a quality assurance, but really it's still a bit of a problem. But it also was pretty limited. It was only a few thousand websites that we collected this way. The third way we tried was collecting by keyword. So this past year, we decided to try a new method for the first time, and that was compiling a list of unique keywords concerning the Jewish diaspora. So instead of asking the selectors to give me websites, I asked them to give me words. So it was like words from anglicized Hebrew words, for instance. It was words from Jewish dialects, like Yiddish and Ladino. There was culturally significant Jewish words, so like names of holidays or specific dishes that were really interesting to see. So using the keywords, we ran searches for websites containing these words, whether in the domain or the description or just in general what came up in Google. So we managed to achieve tens of thousands of websites this way, but we also, again, had a few issues. So one, the question of quality assurance was problematic. Because we didn't know for certain whether the words actually fit the entire website or whether they were just there on accident. And even if they do depict correctly the website, whether it actually does fall into our collection policy. So if there is a recipe for gefilte fish, but actually the website is about cooking fish in general, it's not necessarily within our scope. So another problem was it gave us the most active and the most popular websites, but not necessarily the niche corners of the internet that we are interested in getting a hold of. So, for instance, using again the example of the gefilte fish, it gave us a really good kosher.com, for instance, but it didn't give us the little blog of the little Jewish grandma making gefilte fish for her grandchildren, which is what we want. And the last one that we are still in the stages of implementing is looking for the potential benefits of working with internet analysis companies and seeing if there is a piece of data in their system that might allow us to solve this riddle from a different angle. Maybe by user stats or an automated website descriptors. We still don't know exactly how it's going to look. So in short, our techniques range from a really selective approach to a very wide one. We managed to get a lot more websites than we used to. However, when we take our lists, it's still not enough. We know that there are millions of websites out there, and we're still in the tens of thousands, and we're trying to get there as soon as we can. So just to kind of move on to our vision for the betterment of the Judaica Internet Archive for the future, one angle that we are very, very interested in is creating a network of collaborative cooperation with Judaica curators outside of the library. We know that there's a very wide and rich world of museums, of institutions, of local communities that we want to get involved in our project because we don't see it as just a project of the National Library of Israel, but rather a bigger story that needs to be told. Alongside that, we are also expanding our outreach and education among Jewish communities from around the world. So we're not just interested in a kind of professional academic way, but also in getting to the public, getting to the people whose content we are trying to get, but also we want to give them back these things. So for instance, we go back to the wedding pilot project that is still, again, in early stages, is local wedding websites, which are very popular among certain levels of society. And if you have a Jewish ceremony and you have all the speeches and things, and you put it on a website, we want that website, obviously. Again, the last point that kind of came up again and again in this conference, and we obviously are very much not, we don't have a good solution, but we are launching several social media pilots because we know that a lot of the content that we're interested in isn't on websites. So it's kind of a fool's errand in a sense. We're trying to get all of the websites, but we know that for specific websites, a lot of their content is actually on their Facebook pages and on their Twitter and not necessarily on their websites. So we're keeping that in mind, and we are doing what we can. But this is basically what we're up to at this point. And thank you so much. If you want to contact me, you can find me in both these places. And I would love to hear from you and learn more about any thoughts you might have. Thank you.